All right, we are on Facebook Live.
This is me making it.
Corrie just made it in. Our first guest is Nadia Re Riggi. Do you have your wills up to date? Power of attorney, mandate of protection? I bet you don't. We're going to learn something. So I hope you enjoy the show. And just in case we have a power failure during Facebook Live, you'll be able to see me still, okay? All right? We're covered. We're covered around. All right.
I need sunglasses. Never mind his glasses.
Someone hiding here, Paula Toledo.
Hello.
Will be our second half guest, talking about mental health advocacy. Paula's story, you don't want to miss it. So that's after the 4:30 news. We should be on in about another minute.
Okay. Oh, I need my. Oh my God. So I'm really very.
So what happens, Corrie, when you get in 2 minutes before showtime?
This isn't the right thing at all. Want to use mine? This is. We need. There's no call-ins. Okay. Now I know why we come in an hour early. Because Corrie needs to.
I gotta get used to these. My little necklace. Corrie, look.
Look at that. You're a fancy guy.
17 degrees in downtown Montreal. I'm Richard Deschamps.
Yeah. Will you be here the whole time?
Breaking news.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's good. It just is blocking though. This way now.
Oh,
Here we go.
okay. Do you want me to?
When you see on air, that means we're on air.
Cool. Ready? Ready.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed, the show about the ins and outs of family life. So your life isn't going exactly as planned. Well, you're not alone, and we're here to help out. My name is Matt Del Vecchio, specializing in free retirement home search and senior transition support. In studio here with my co-host Corrie Sirota, clinical social worker and psychotherapist specializing in grief and loss, coming right up on Life Unrehearsed. You know, as we age, we start thinking more about which legal documents we should have in order. Well, there's a difference between thinking about it and actually doing it. Are your wills up to date? What's a power of attorney? What's a protection mandate? It can be really confusing. And what is the difference of them all? But we do need to take this very, very seriously. That's why we have one of Montreal's finest notaries in studio to navigate us through it all. Corrie, it's going to be very interesting. I learned a lot, and I thought I was up to speed. So it's going to be coming up right very shortly. Corrie, I have to talk about legal documents, and a shout out to Jamie Benezri, owner of Legal Logic, pulled off on Thursday night at LinkedIn Awards in Town Hall, and I was very privileged to have be a presenter for the category of wellness. And it was a heck of an event, a big turnout, and kudos to Jamie and his entire team. Fun event and a lot of inspirational. There were 10 different categories, and you know what? Montreal's in very good hands.
Well, it's so great to hear about it. I saw a lot of that actually on Facebook, and I know so many of the people that were nominated were really top-notch people. So it's great that he's doing that, and people are working hard. So to acknowledge them too, and all of it at the end of the day was also a fundraiser.
That's right. It was for the Lakeshore General Hospital Foundation. They raised a lot of money for that, and a great cause. Great people, and there's some wonderful entrepreneurs out there. In fact, Jamie will be a guest on our show on October 14th. We're going to be doing our rapid fire Q&A for legal questions.
Love chatting with them. Okay, so speaking of great people, on the second half of the show, we also have a very, very great person coming in to talk with us. This is a woman who only 8 years ago, her husband died by suicide, leaving her a single mom of children that were 2 and 2 weeks old. So on the second half, we're going to talk about how Paula Toledo not only learned how to manage and cope with this tragedy, but became an actual inspiration to many, many other people through helping understand how to manage grief and loss. She's also a TEDx speaker, so we know she's going to be great.
An amazing person. She's in studio with us right now, and that will be after the 4:30 news. Can't wait to hear about that. All right. Corrie, I was amazed to hear that about 50% of the Canadian population over the age of 50 still do not have an up-to-date will. And that's just a will. What about the power of attorneys and protection mandates and all these other legal jargons that we may not know about. It is very confusing, and that's why we're very pleased to have in studio notary extraordinaire Nadia Re Riggi to help us out. Nadia, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming in here. You are dealing with such important topics that we tend to, put aside, and we probably shouldn't. But I think let's try to clear the air with some general terms. I think we've all heard about a will, but let's define what a will does.
Sure. So I think that's a really, really good place to start. As you said, 50% of the population does not have a will at all. So not only do they not have an updated will, they don't have a will whatsoever. I think it's so important for everybody to have one and really to give it some thought. So a will, when you're looking at a will, in Quebec, it's defined by our civil code. So it's defined in Article 704 of the civil code. And it's defined as being a unilateral act, it's defined as being a revocable act, and it's an act in which someone can dispose liberally of his property to take effect after his death. So what that means is that it's a document in which you can leave instruction for the transfer of your assets to your loved ones after your death. So it's a way for you to keep control.
To summarize, then, a will is really a document to demonstrate the transfer of assets.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm saying that, because that's going to come up in a couple of our other definitions.
Right. So there's a will, and then there is also things like power of attorney, and I think people tend to get that confused. So can you please clarify that?
Yes. So a lot of clients do confuse the legal documents. A power of attorney is not for everyone. Power of attorney is a contract in which you appoint someone and you give that person either specific powers to act on your behalf for a specific act. So, for example, I could write a power of attorney for you, Corrie, and I could say, Corrie, I'm going away next week, but my house closing is next week. Can you sign the deed of sale? So that's a specific power of attorney. And then you have a general power of attorney. So we see this often with elderly parents who perhaps are well mentally but physically can't get out as much, so they draft a general power of attorney in which they appoint their children to act on their behalf for everything. So that's what a power of attorney is. So not everybody needs one. Definitely everybody needs a will.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think what everybody does need is a protection mandate.
So just on that note, you're listening to Life Unrehearsed. That's Nadia Re Riggi, a notary, discussing our legal documents. And as you know, Nadia and Corrie, in my world where we help moms and dads find a retirement residences, so often there is a power of attorney, and an adult child, for example, who's designated to sign, can sign a lease. But so often I run into situations where there may be a case where mom or dad is inept, they may have Alzheimer's, and I get, well, it's no problem, I have my power of attorney, so I'm just going to sign the lease, or I'm going to sign the banking documents, and then big panic hits when they realize that power of attorney is not going to go very far. So you talked about a protection mandate, right?
Yes.
Is that the next step?
That is the next step, and so it's very similar to a power of attorney in that it's a contract that allows you to name somebody. So you appoint somebody to care for you and to make your decisions. The difference, though, is in the person's capacity to instruct their attorney. So if I'm giving you power of attorney, it's because I'm apt and I understand what's going on. But from the moment I'm declared inapt, then we look to see, did this person write a protection mandate in anticipation of his incapacity? So in anticipation of that, you can say, I would name my husband, I would name my children, I would name Matt Del Vecchio as my mandatory. So that is the big difference. It's in the capacity of the mandator, or the person giving the authority, and it's in the timing on when we use it as well.
So let's be clear, though, about that. You have to be of sane mind and body in order to give someone that mandate.
Absolutely.
So what happens if, because often, I'm sure, often or more often than not, there are people who become perhaps experience dementia, for example, and they now no longer, if I'm understanding you, no longer have the ability or the right to sign a legal document. So what does someone do then?
That's a really good question. And actually our civil code covers for cases like that. And so all of this is set out in the civil code, and what it says is that it depends on the degree of the incapacity, but there are basically 3 types of legal representation that we can request from the courts, and it's all based on the person's health situation. So are they fully incapacitated? Are they partially incapacitated? Is it a permanent or is it partial? Or is it someone who suffers from mild cognitive impairment who just needs a legal advisor?
Okay, so that helps us understand more. What we're going to have to take, believe it or not, a traffic break right now. But when we come back, I want to know what the biggest mistake you see people do or make regarding these legal documents. So we're going to
it's a very good question, Corrie, and we're going to hear a lot more about the definition of protection of mandate, because I think a lot of people, I hear it so often that okay, just review that one more time for me, and because it's important, where people are assuming they have these legal documents and they're safe and they're covered, when in fact, oh my goodness, I didn't have that done. So we're also going to want to know about some of the recourses.
So that we'll hear as soon as we come back from traffic. You just stretch that.
Yeah,
Stretch
so that was just stretching out,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we were at 4:14
Yeah.
and a half. Okay, very good.
There's
We
too
could
much.
talk 2 hours on
Yeah.
this.
I know.
There it is.
There's so much.
I've said nothing really.
Yeah, really.
Like
we
I
have
touched,
a
like,
longer.
just
We have a longer
The
time.
second, yeah.
Yeah, and so
like
So,
wills,
Corrie,
if you want to talk
you-
about like.
yeah, because I'm going to bring back wills.
I think we do need to go back into it before the next
I'm
questions.
going to bring back wills. So I have to bring back the question I asked you. What's the big? Because I'm gonna lead it in by, as a grief counselor, I worked at a funeral home and people. So that's how I'll lead it in. I'll ask a question about wills.
Question about wills, when?
Well,
Right away, or the biggest?
All right. Well, we got to go to the biggest mistake, and I can do a second question then.
Good. Or unless you want me to come in with the biggest mistake, and
Why
then
don't
you
you
want
do
to
that?
lead into wills?
Yeah.
Okay, because you'll be able to talk from experience.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question, the teaser question, will be, what's the biggest mistake?
Right.
Because you're probably going to bring up wills in your answer,
Well, what we talked about was just the non-revisal and non. We'll
Okay.
talk about it, yeah.
and then you
Yeah,
can
no,
go
I'll
into
I'll
your
go into
wills.
yeah.
Okay, and then I'd like to say we're going to get into, this is our sponsor, by the way,
For the last 27 years.
Marco
He oversees
Vendramini.
not only for the
Support him,
competitive
best financial advisor in Montreal.
the expertise
We're allowed to plug on Facebook
Yeah.
Live. And then I'd like to get into the scenario that you actually did a protection mandate
Mm-hmm.
while you're out.
Yes.
Now you need to enforce it,
Yes.
and there's a word for that called homologation.
Homologation.
Can you please tell us what homologation is? So I'll get into homologation
Sure.
after that, okay?
Okay.
Is that all right? And
Yeah.
then
So,
we
but do I welcome everybody back, and then you'll just jump into the question?
yeah, if you want.
Well, because you wanted to ask the question.
Yeah. Okay, so music, you welcome back, and then I'll get
Yeah.
into the teaser question.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you do wills, I'll do homologation, and there's going to be like 2 or
And
3
then we'll see
minutes.
what else-
We're
what else
going to
we can
fly
get.
through it. Yeah.
Because we can always love to have you back to do something. Because I think you could do a
You
whole
could do a
show,
whole show
Yeah.
on advanced medical
100%.
directives. 100%, you can do a whole show on advanced medical.
One at a
directives.
time, guys.
You know what?
My
It's funny
first-
because
You're
it's
great. You're great.
it's and it's frustrating a little bit for us, but we
Yeah.
understand any guest that we have, and this one in particular, we could do a full show easily.
Yeah.
But we try to mix it up just in case the audience isn't interested in this topic. So
Makes
we
sense.
always have to do 2 topics.
I also
per
think
show.
if you give too much information, some of it gets lost. So it's interesting to break it down.
It's really interesting.
And
very
fortunately, you know,
informative.
people in their 40s, 30s, they don't really think about it. And then people in their 50s or 60s are thinking, well, I took care of that. No, you didn't. You just
Yeah.
don't know enough about
right,
it. You know, I got
right.
my power of attorney. It's in my will.
Yeah, it's like, ooh.
So you'll do an introduction.
Oh,
I'll do
we
the
got
script.
a text.
Oh, we did.
How long
should
should it take a power of attorney trustee to settle a will after a death? Can the trustee change the will after death if they are also the trustee?
So that just goes to show.
Can you answer that?
I don't understand. Because you have power of attorney and will in the same sentence, and it
Yeah.
should never go in the same sentence.
Okay,
Okay,
so that's
so-
perfect.
But I can correct it. And
Yes. So
absolutely.
after homologation,
You
go to the text.
Oh, okay.
because that's a perfect example of
Sure.
the confusion.
Yeah. Well, actually, what I would really like, and I don't know if you would do this, but I'm sure it exists, like a 1 or 2 line of each of those, and let's post it on our Facebook.
Absolutely. I can even write it out for you.
Could you write it out? That
We'll
would
cut
be.
and paste it. It'll go in tonight.
I'll
How
do that
great
this
would that
week for
be?
you.
That's what I
Smart.
was thinking. I think we should. I
Smart.
think that would be great.
Very good.
So your practice is on Cavendish? Yes. Okay.
Cavendish and Shaw. Are you familiar with the area?
Cavendish and Shaw.
I'm in NDG.
In NDG? Okay,
Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
So Corey,
Yeah.
at 4:30,
Yeah.
we have the teaser to do, right?
Yeah.
4:33, and here we go, and we have the recording.
Okay. I'm welcoming, and then you're. Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corrie Sirota with my co-host Matt Del Vecchio, and we are talking to notary Nadia Re Riggi about our legal documents in order to help us get some sense of lots of terms, lots of confusion, but she is really helping us navigate that. You heard Elvis as I came in talking about a little more action, because we tend to procrastinate, a little less conversation, right? Well, we are absolutely advocating that you need to have these conversations with your loved ones. I know it's not easy, but it is a must.
It absolutely is a must, and I'm really pleased. We're getting texts coming in, Corey, and this is such an important topic. The question you asked just before traffic, Corey, I thought was very important. And Nadia, we're gonna put you on the spot here. So, what's the biggest mistake you see people make regarding their legal documents?
Well, I think the biggest mistake that I see all the time is that people think legal documents are done once a lifetime, and then we never have to look at them again. So they go to the notary when they're newly married, and then they put the documents away in the drawer, and then they never look at them again. Well, guess what? Life happens.
Life is
as we
unrehearsed.
know.
Yeah.
And things change, and so should your legal documents. So your wills need to be looked at, your mandates need to be looked at, either, I say generally every 5 to 10 years, but not only that, whenever something happens.
For sure, when
yeah,
something
if
happens.
there's a wedding, a birth, a death, you need to look at your documents.
Well,
so that's
it.
the biggest mistake.
I would really like to go back to this whole concept of wills, because as a grief counselor, I meet with families who don't have some form of, think they have some form of. When I worked at a funeral home, it was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So can you elaborate more on wills, the type of wills? I know a lot of people said, I wrote it down, that's good, I'm good to go.
Sure. So our civil code actually provides or recognizes, I should say, 3 forms of wills. So you have the holograph will, which is a will entirely written by hand, dated and signed by the testator. So the testator is obviously the person writing the document. And then we have a will before witnesses. A will before witnesses can be written by the testator or by a third party or typed. And it's signed in front of 2 witnesses. The 2 witnesses will also sign, and each page is initialed. And oftentimes a will drawn up with a lawyer, that's what we refer to as a will before witnesses. Mm-hmm. And then we have the final form, which is a notarial will. So that's where you go and see your notary, and you discuss what your wishes are. The notary will draft the document. The document is read before you and signed with you in the presence of the notary and a witness. What's really important to take away from that is that the first 2 types, the holograph will and the will before witnesses, will actually need to be probated before a court upon your passing. So they cannot be used automatically.
So can I ask you one little question about that? People will go online today and find something, and so those would need to be, let's be very clear, those would need to be probated.
Absolutely. So I have had clients come in and say, well, why would I pay your fee when I went online for $10? I got a will. And so then I like to explain to them that actually they may not pay the fees up front, but their estate will end up paying the fees in court.
A very good point. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Del Vecchio here with my co-host Corrie Sirota. We are getting educated here with some very valuable information from notary Nadia Re Riggi. Nadia, I want to go back and tell me if I've been listening well. Okay, so we've got the will. I've got my will. I have a power of attorney, and so that gives me some powers to sign documents on behalf of someone. They are apt and they are aware of it. Next step is what we call a protection mandate. So you are apt when you're actually creating this protection mandate.
Yes.
You are assigning someone that could really speak on your behalf if you get into a situation where you're no longer apt. Let's say you are in that situation. I am no longer apt. There's this fancy term called homologation, right?
And I'm looking it up actually.
Okay, can you explain a homologation?
So what homologation is actually giving life to the mandate, or it's actually getting the approval of the court. So what it means is that we are enforcing the document and enforcing the contents of the document. So when you go and see your notary to drop a protection mandate, you're apt. And so the mandate is not in effect. It will only take effect once you're declared incapacitated by your doctor and also a social worker.
So the process to get it homologated is that
Yes.
you need a document filled out by a doctor, you're saying, and a social worker.
Correct. So any interested party can step forward to say Matt is not well, and
I've heard that a
do
lot, by the way.
believe-
Yeah.
I'm feeling the
I do.
fifth here.
I do believe that his mandate needs to be homologated. What do I do? And so we work with families, we contact the doctor, and we contact a social worker to have evaluations done.
So after those evaluations are done, if you
Mhm.
go through the public system, it could be an enormous amount of time,
Yes.
months and months and months. And
Yes.
if you go privately, a little quicker, but you do pay for it. But let's say you get those documents
Mhm.
now. Then it goes back into a notary's hands?
Yes, and we will bring it to court before a special clerk, and we'll present the mandate with the evaluations as proof that this person does in fact need legal representation, and then it runs its course through the court system, and we wait for a judgment.
How long would that take from the time it goes in your hands?
Generally, right now in Montreal, I'm seeing a long delay, and so I'm going to say from 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months after having those
yes.
documents completed by the
Correct.
doctor.
I mean, there are always exceptions, and there are ways we can expedite things, but generally speaking, it's a matter of months.
Wow, okay. So a text just came in. I'm going to put you on the spot again. How long should it take a power of attorney / trustee to settle a will after death? Can the trustee change the will after death if they are also the trustee?
Okay, so if I understand the question, there are a lot of terms in there that perhaps shouldn't go together. Power of attorney and trustee don't go necessarily together because we won't find the power of attorney in the will. So I think that perhaps this texter wanted to talk about liquidator or executor of the estate, the person called to settle the estate. In terms of how long it would take to settle, there's no set time. I would say, generally speaking, minimum 6 months, and it can take several years. So it depends on the complexity of the estate, and it depends what the assets are. And the trustee cannot change the will. No, a will is a legal document, and so the liquidator or the trustee has to abide by the contents.
Very interesting. We have time for one quick question here, Nadia. You mentioned something off air that something you see quite often. Common law couples make certain assumptions regarding a will.
They do.
So in Quebec, there are a lot of common law couples. Can you explain their rights?
Well, here's what I say to clients who come in who are common law, who believe that they're protected simply because they've lived together longer than a year. It's simply not true. If one of them were to pass away, the other would not inherit anything. So currently, under our civil code, common law spouses do not inherit from each other. So there's no affiliation or lineage between them. And so one of the biggest and most important things they can do is draw up a will to protect each other.
And get it notarized by Nadia.
Absolutely.
Right. Nadia, thank you so much. Very valuable information,
you
Corey.
so much.
We appreciate you being here. How can people get a hold of you?
So on my website, it's lamarderiggi.com, and by phone, 514-484-2788.
Well, thank you very much, Nadia.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Coming up after the news, you do not want to miss this interview. We have Paula Toledo in the house. She's going to be talking about how she had to deal with the death of her husband by suicide, leaving her a single mom with children who were just 2 years old and 2 weeks old. She has become a huge inspirational speaker and a mental health advocate. That's coming up right after we return on Life Unrehearsed. We'll be heading out to news shortly.
Of an art collector.
Excellent.
Oh, now we have
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. fantastic job.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
I
yeah.
have to re-listen to everything.
It's true, 2 or 3
That's why
times.
I said
Call
if
me.
you-
We have to say goodbye to.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind writing one line that
We're gonna put it on Facebook Live,
Okay.
right, or on our Life
on
Under
our
Her
Life
Facebook page.
Facebook.
Say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
Coming
for
up
having us.
next, we got Paula.